Mike, you're up first, sir. So if you want to come up, take a seat, state your name and who you are for the record, and let's have a discussion pertaining to the counties that border Bannock County for Snow Grooming Board.
Mike Garrett, and I am with the Bannock County Snow Machine Grooming Board.
What's the position you currently hold?
Co-chairman.
Okay, there we go. All right, how's things going?
Good. How about yourself?
Well, I hope that it would not warm up as much because the skiing's not going to be as good when it turns to slush on the mountain, but that's okay.
Well, we got hammered again last night. I live by the ski area.
You got good snow? How's the trails doing out there?
6 inches.
For the grooming?
Good.
You got snow?
I've only ridden the groom trail once. He groomed it actually a week ago today, and he did a good job. So there was a lot of people up there. New Year's Day, there was 29 trucks and trailers in the parking lot. Absolutely no room.
At Crystal?
At Inman.
Inman?
And that's absolutely full parking lot. I mean, it was kind of a disaster. At our last meeting, the guy from Parks and Recreation was there and said that we had all kinds of money to do parking lots and things like that. And I've been working pretty closely with Sheila Larson from the Forest Service. Got her to make a little improvement to the parking lot, which was good, and people noticed it.
Okay.
But when I said something to her after the meeting about, hey, if we got all this money, why can't we do something to the Inman parking lot? She just, oh, no, it's red tape. We got to do this. We got to go do that. And anyway, I'm going to see what I can do about getting hold of that Brian DeLenge again and see if maybe Parks and Recreation will help us out. But the Forest Service, she just said this could be a 5-year project. And I'm sure that's the way things go with the Forest Service.
Yeah, so Forest Service is federal, so they're probably, I would assume, anything they do is usually pretty, it's weird because they'll get a pot of money all of a sudden and then they'll be like, we just got to spend it, go as fast as you can. And then other things, but if you go through the state, they usually are a lot easier to work with because they're a little bit more proactive about putting people in the forests than the forest. I mean, the Forest Service wants you in there, but they don't want to give you any money to do anything or make changes.
And that's the impression I got from her, just a lot of red tape to go through to get some improvements done. But I sent her a picture because she told me, she says, when you have issues like that, or I said, sometimes people even park down Inman Road and that's a safety hazard. And that was the reason that she did the improvement to the parking lot, because I told her it was a safety hazard and she agreed. So actually something got done within like 2 weeks after I took her out. I met her over to Inman and we talked about it, and they got something done. And
Is the Inman Creek parking lot, is that all on Forest Service ground or is that Bannock County ground?
That's all Forest Service.
Is it all Forest Service? So it's on the Forest Service ground?
Because Bannock County will plow to the entrance, and sometimes they'll even go down into the parking lot and turn their equipment around and come out. But Forest Service plows the parking lot.
Okay.
And they've done a good job of that too. I've been over there twice this week just to kind of monitor it. Because now all of a sudden I got a target on my back because everybody knows I'm on a grooming board. Hey.
Thank you for serving, by the way.
Thank you very much.
All right. But other than that, bordering counties. So what's the
Well, at our
concern?
last meeting, they talked about Crystal Summit is actually in Power County,
Yes, it is.
and some of Inman is actually in Caribou County. And so I said, well, I'll just call those counties and see what we need to do just to get along and get their okay and this and that. And they said, no, you got to go through the commissioner. So here I am. I don't even know what the proper thing to do is as far as saying, hey, is it all right if we groom Caribou County and Power County? I don't know.
So we have an MOU from when?
20 years ago.
20 year, like 1990 something is when we found the MOU.
Did we
And
find that MOU?
I think it was 92.
92. And so the whole thing is, so the funds that are given and granted for the groomer come from the state. And anybody can jump in and correct me at any time.
Snowmobile registration.
For the snowmobile registrations passed through by the state. It comes through Parks and Recreation is actually where it should be coming from. And so those funds, the ownership of the groomer, I believe the groomer is still owned by the state, but we use it, right?
I think so.
We don't actually own title to it. I think
I
it's,
can't remember, I haven't done assets in so long.
yeah,
but
I didn't see it the last time. For some odd reason, it makes me want to think that. So the whole thing is the state, from what I've gathered, usually puts the groomers and the funds usually in the more populated areas or the counties that have capacity. Now, that's not always true because there's some of the smaller counties that do that. So the funds that are used to operate that groomer, again, we're gonna talk about county funds, state funds, what they're used for. Their use is to maintain the snow grooming trails. And I would look at it that if you're grooming a trail in Power County that allows people access into Bannock County, because there's the parking lot up there, correct? And then in Inman, Inman, you're going over into Caribou, which allows free travel and passage on a snowmobile, let's put it that way. I would look at it that would probably be allowed and inside the scope of those funds. It's not like you're going up there and paving a road or doing anything with the funds that's like a road and bridge fund. You can't do that. But with this fund, where it's not property tax dollars generated in Bannock County, it's registrations from Bannock County. But you might also have somebody who registered their snowmobile in Franklin County but decided to have the registration money go to Bannock, because you can select that when you register.
It's the same thing with our waterways monies,
Yeah.
as long as it's used for that purpose.
Yeah, you can pretty much. So I don't have a problem with you guys reaching out and doing that. And that's actually, I look at, because they don't have a snowmobile board or anything like that in those other counties.
Correct.
There's nothing out there.
Well, I know, I talked to the people down at Tri-County, that's Caribou County, Franklin County, and Bear Lake County. But this was before our last meeting, before this was even brought up.
Who'd you talk to? The commissioners or?
No, the sheriff that's in charge of it,
See, I actually would encourage the board, because you are the representative on that board of commissioners. You can't bind us to like a contract or anything like that. But I don't see why, if the board has entrusted you with the authority to go talk to them, go talk to them. You don't need our permission to go talk to somebody like that. Just please don't volunteer us for a bunch of stuff, or, those are kind of the but I don't have a problem with, you should be. I mean, that's actually what we would encourage, is what's the discussion? What's the, is there an issue out there that we need to fix?
Christie, can we find him a copy of that MOU? And maybe, or Alan, or whoever.
Have it right there.
Yeah,
and you were at our last meeting,
Yeah.
correct?
He will be at here, and that's the other thing too. So Alan, are you going to be the one that's going to be there for most of them?
Yeah.
So he's legal counsel, and I won't
Yeah.
tell you that he's not the referee that gets to tell you exactly what to do, but he'll give counsel, and I would highly encourage the counsel coming from Alan to, make sure. But yeah, to go talk to those guys, and to encourage that relationship, and to have, especially the law enforcement side, if their sheriffs are the ones that are running that, I would look at that you would want to build that relationship with them, because let's face it, people go sledding and do dumb things, or people aren't registered, and you would,
And also in the bylaws, it states that too, that they, or not bylaws, but these little
Yeah.
pamphlets, they say that the different county boards ought to go to each other's meetings and kind of say, hey, this is how we do it.
Yeah.
And that's why, the guy's name is Ryan Larson. He's a sheriff I think he lives in Silver Springs.
Mhm.
But he's the one that tells them what to do in the tri-counties.
So yeah, I would look at for those counterparts in those counties that border us. Caribou, what does Oneida County do? I mean,
I have
I'm
no idea. I don't know if Oneida and Billard,
I know that-
they're kind of in that area over there, so
because I know in the past the snow groomer actually went down and groomed a trail or two that actually borders into Oneida County, and so that's the whole thing is that there should be some conversation. Maybe there's an area that's used heavily, that there's a trail that wants to be opened up or something that's there. As long as you have access on public right-of-way or private property that landowners have given you access and are willing to sign an MOU to groom across, because that's what we don't want to do. We don't want to go groom a trail across somebody's private property, because then,
that's the problem.
that's happened in the past. Let's not do that. But I would highly encourage you guys to go talk to them. And you, as a member of the board, what I would say is that your next meeting, or before your next meeting, if you're talking, is, hey, I'm going to go talk to them and I'm going to go do this, and the board can give you authorization as a full support, or they can just say, just whoever wants to go do it if the board doesn't have a problem with that. But if they want to have, hey, we want you to be the representative that reaches out and goes and does that, I would encourage that. And so, but then if there's any kind of like, hey, we're talking about we want to have an agreement or a contract or anything like that, the board would need to be something that would come back to this group. So,
And that's
part of, there's a lot of things, a lot of layers to this, but one of the layers was that the Forest Service indicated that they were not going to recognize that 1990 agreement,
Right.
Well, we need a new one.
and so.
Can you send that to me, Alan?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Add me on there.
Anybody else want it?
Anybody else want it? Ray needs it. I've never read it. I've always heard about it, but I try and keep those. I have a file on my computer that I try and keep all of that. And that's another thing that we need to do on the board is we do need to have all those current updated agreements. A lot of them have just been no change, approved again, kicked down the road. And
They did make a little, one small change to the bylaws. At our last meeting, we all voted it in, but, because things have been done differently, and I think they're gonna try and do things a little differently now, but it was just a small change, so.
Well, and again, as long as those changes are inside and follow the intent and the rule of what the board was set up, that's, you guys are the governing board. Now, if there's some of those bylaw changes that are, I don't want to say we would correct them, but there might be a bylaw that maybe does not fall within state statute, county ordinance, or something like that, we might have to have an adjustment with. Anytime you guys are going to do bylaw changes, what I would suggest is I would make sure that it's published or put out some. I know that we were going to get them a landing page on the Facebook or on the internet. So we're going to build you guys. You will have a snowmobile board page. Have you been to the Bannock County website yet? The new one that's been.
No.
So the new one, and we're going to have a landing spot for snowmobile. So people can kick on, and we'll start putting that in. It would be great to have a trail map. It'd be great to have when you've groomed, when it's there, that kind of stuff, so people can go look. When you want to do a bylaw change, put it up there and say, hey, proposed bylaws, this is what we want to do. I would send a bylaw change to the Office of the Commission so we all get a chance to read it and look at it. And if we have comments, we may comment because we're citizens too. That's the whole thing is when you do those bylaws, you want to have those where you just don't show up that night and say, hey, we're going to have a bylaw change. It has to be agendized, and I would actually say those bylaw changes, you want to have multiple weeks of advertising that people know that that's out there, because those are one of the things that, as you found, people know that you're on the board and they're going to want to have those conversations with you at the gas station or the grocery store, wherever they find you. And so having those things out that way, but that would be, you guys feel free to, and again, that's your board, as long as you don't bind us to something and volunteer us for something that's a financial thing, we're pretty cool with whatever you guys want to do that way. I mean, and that's why Alan will be there, or Brian if Alan's not there, but that's the whole thing, is to fall within that. The other thing within that is to make sure that all of your meetings are agendized, but please go talk to all those other people. I mean, like we said, that's the biggest thing that we're trying to encourage people is to talk that way.
Yeah, and they gave me some pretty good ideas, and that really ruffled some feathers at our last meeting when I brought those ideas up.
So I will be polite with this, and we'll try not to use names, but the people's feathers that were ruffled, were they members of the board, or were they just, well, so the board is the controlling governing body. And this is the other thing is the board, you guys have rules, you have bylaws. We operate a little different because there's 3 of us, so we don't use Robert's rules, we use Mason's rules. But in that board, the only people that, while that's a public meeting, it's not a public hearing. And the only people that should be talking and participating are the people that are agendized or the board members. And if somebody wants to talk, they get to raise their hand and request permission of the chairman to speak.
That's another thing. Commissioner Moser wasn't at the last meeting, and it got out of control. I just want to get up and walk out and say, this is a waste of my time.
Yeah.
It's a waste of your time. Let's call it.
So,
Because everybody had all these different ideas, and I thought, no, because I know if Ernie was there, he would have said, well,
yeah.
it's your turn to talk when we say it's your turn to talk.
So I stopped in, so I had to swear people in. Ernie had an engagement, and then I had something else right after that. But then we have Braden sitting there, and so this is the funny thing is Braden is our chief of staff. It should be just like one of us is sitting in the room, because he's empowered to sit in that room as our representative. He doesn't get to make decisions or do comment, but it should be just like having one of us sitting there as a representative that's going to report back. And we should be able to get to a point where one of the commissioners should not have to sit in a room to referee, and we're not referees. But that's where the chairman, and that's where you guys, and maybe what we need to do is maybe we need to have some training on that way of running some of those meetings, because it can get out of hand real quick. And everybody thinks the chairman can be kind of a mean person. You know, when we get into Board of Equalization and some of these other ones, people get kind of nasty if I'm running the meeting, because I'm very, nope, be quiet, you're done, next person. And that's just how it has to happen. And so if you guys would like us to help you with that, we could have maybe a training session. We could have the legal staff and a couple of us where we could actually sit there and go through it with you guys. Because it is something that, and you, and members of the board don't feel shy to say, Mr. Chairman, I believe so-and-so's out of order.
Finally, after about half hour, 40 minutes of the stuff that went on, the chairman finally said, hey, we need to move on to the next thing, because, well, the guy from Parks and Rec was there and the Forest Service, and they were this and that, and got into it with the, shouldn't say got into it with the operator, the groomer operator, but basically sided with him. And I don't think that's the way that Bannock County Snow Machine Grooming Board should operate our system or those meetings. But like I say, Ernie wasn't there. I'm like, oh, I knew as soon as he didn't show up, I thought, oh no.
So here's the other thing. The groomer is an employee of the board. The groomer works for the board. And if the groomer wants to speak out of turn, the board may have the employee not present. The board, again, that is your employee, and so we want to be polite, we want to be professional, we want to, you know, have standards of conduct. But the whole thing is the groomer doesn't speak for the board. They don't have the authority. You are the representatives of the county. You guys are the ones that have the authority. And if you guys want to have, and that's where the chairman, and maybe I think that's probably what we should do is maybe, and if you would like to talk to the chairman and a couple of other board members, you know, I was fortunate enough when I started getting into stuff like this that I had somebody that sat with me, and I learned a lot of how to run a meeting. And I do it a different style. Jeff does it a different way than I do. Ernie does it different than we do. But there's always some basic things, and it's kind of like practicing for sport. You gotta, because it's a full contact debate is what they are, and it's how you keep them.
And that was my thought. That groomer operator works for us, but he does not like to do things the way they should be done for the people that are buying the stickers, the people that run those trails and everything.
So I will counsel then, and I'll speak lightly because I have lawyers that they'll start losing their minds here in a second as I say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. The intent of the board, when directed to the employee, is what the employee is it will carry out. And if the employee does not wish to follow the directives of the board, that is insubordination, and that is grounds for termination. So if you guys say we want to do X, and they say, well, I'm not going to do that, well, you're not going to be the groomer then. And that's how that works. That's just, I mean, we've had people come into us and say, well, I don't want to do that. Well, your job description doesn't say you get to decide what you'd like to do. It says this is as directed. And you guys are the advisory board that gives marching orders and how that works. And it's not that you guys are trying to be tyrants or do things. You're not going to tell somebody to do something that violates the law, county policy, or other things. We also have county standards and conduct in our employment policy. And that's the other thing, too, that people will follow that. And part of that is being professional, being polite, and following what the directives of your supervisors tell you.
Tough. Backing this up about a year ago, the grooming board's always been the good old boys club, and then Ernie asked me if I would be on it. And boy, they all just want to just choke me because they all do their own thing together. They're the Pocatello Pathfinders is where this all started. And then they got me in there, and I'm a thorn in their behind because I want something done about Inman.
Good.
But the guy doesn't want to do anything about Inman. He wants to take it off of his grooming schedule.
That's
the board's purview.
That's the board's purview. And that's the whole thing with the board. So now we've added, what, 2 more members that I swore in.
2 more.
So, and there should be a differentiation of opinion on the board. You shouldn't have one cluster of individuals that make up a board, because that's not the voice of the county. The county, that board should be made of a cross-section of people that live from the north to the south, and in the different snowmobile clubs and organizations and stuff like that.
And that's the way it's been. Let's say there was 4 of them, and then Ernie got me in there, and it's 4 against 1 now at all of our meetings. So I got 2 more guys on my side. That's still 4 against 3 for a majority vote. But, I mean, a lot of things like that, there has to be a little give and take, and I'm willing to do that.
So what I would like to do, and I think it might help, is, and we'll probably have to talk to Ernie or figure out, is just maybe some training on this. But the funny thing is the chairman isn't the most powerful person running the meeting. The other members that participate on the board can really make meetings really not fun because of procedural things and how it's done. When you start calling the divisions of questions and roll calls and all that. And so that's the problem, is when you have to run by the rules, which the rules will be enforced, because the first time the rules are not enforced and we have Alan come back and say, hey, they violated the meeting conduct and how it should be done, we're probably going to be a little irritated. But I think what we really need to do is, I think we need to have a meeting with the board, specifically a training meeting with the board on how things run. I think we need to do some training on rules of order, how people are recognized. We also need to have probably a training, employment training, a discussion of employment policy.
Just a general board
Just a
training.
general board training, because I think that's where we've had, because there's
think
new
that'd be a
members.
great idea.
You think that would be okay, that you guys would, how do I say this? Whether they like it or not, I think it's good. I think that's what we need to,
Well, and that would be good.
Well,
Like I say, I'm the black sheep of the board right now.
Well, be the black sheep of the board, and the whole thing, be professional, be polite, make sure your objections are known, go through those things. Now that we have 2 more members, you are representing the county, and if we start to see that there are open meeting law issues or organizations that are meeting after the meeting and going out and discussing things, those people won't be on the board anymore.
Well, they meet out at the snow machine where they store the groomer.
Yeah, we'll have a
They meet
conversation.
out there at least once a month, maybe even every week, and have their own little thing. But I'm not even invited to that. But that's the Pocatello Pathfinders.
They're using the building?
Oh, yeah, they have.
Oh, no, that's done. That's done. I
they
want to.
have dinners and everything.
No, I wanna, that is not authorized. That is not allowed. So we need to have let's get the snowmobile board, a full meeting of the board as fast as possible. We'll be
Well,
back.
and even Ernie told me, so are you taking minutes out there? Is that, no. But that's, like I say, that's Pocatello Pathfinder, but they.
But they don't own the building, so the facility is Bannock County's. We have not given authorization to do that, and the next time that happens, I will request every single member of that board be removed. Because that is not how this works. And if they want to use it as a private little organization and a facility, that's a misuse of a facility. That facility, you can't have a part, it would be like Road and Bridge going out and having a party in the facility for their own private benefit. I'm sure the lawyers would lose their minds if they walked out and they had a nightclub going on in the middle of the Road and Bridge Bay. I'm just saying, it's probably not that good. So let's go ahead and get them on the board. Let's go ahead and meet next week, and we're going to have some policies of conduct. We'll talk with lawyers, and we're going to line some stuff up,
I think
and
that's a
we'll set
great
some
idea.
training together. If you want to go ahead and talk to the surrounding counties, do you have an issue with that?
No, just review that contract, which I'm looking at it here, and it needs some serious updating and some serious work, so if you want to reach out.
According to the Forest Service, there's been subsequent memos of understanding. This is the only one that we have
Okay.
that I know of, but they say there's other ones that have been out there. I don't know if there's subsequent ones out there, or
Do they have
this is
copies?
what we have.
Yeah.
I'll reach out to Kim.
See what we can get a hold of.
She had called me earlier this week, and we got the agreement to keep the plowing for 22, so
Okay.
I'll see if I can get the.
Get whatever they got.
The MOU is,
Okay.
yeah.
And then feel free to contact us with whatever you need. And any member of the board should feel free to reach out to the commissioners if they need to. You guys don't have to set up like even you can't ask for a decision, but if you just need counsel on something besides legal counsel, We are here for counsel if you need it. So,
Okay.
please feel free for that, but we'll work with Braden and Christie and we'll get that lined up for as fast as we can make that happen, okay?
I think that'd be a great idea.
Okay, sir. If you need anything else, please holler at us, okay?
I'll do that.
Cool, thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
All right. Dave, public defender stuff, requesting fund for special expenditures on homicide cases.
Dave with his big smile.
Don't you? Doesn't the state have money set aside for this?
It's actually our problem. It's the $10,000 that we have to spend before.
I know.
And I don't have, Dave Martinez, public defender.
Thank you.
I don't have a commitment from the state on whether or not they're gonna ask for the death penalty on the one that, we've got now, the double murder. It's death penalty eligible.
Okay.
So I would like $10,000. The unfortunate part is for the last 3 years, we've had a $25,000 kind of set-aside fund just for this purpose. We didn't do it this year.
We did.
We did?
But it's $30,000 sitting in district court.
It's in district court?
Yep.
Okay.
So I'll just
So-
mark that, assuming commission approves.
Yeah, I don't.
I'll just mark $10,000, just give me the case name, or the defendant name.
And so this is
It's
just
Jesse
in
Lee.
case money?
Jesse Lee.
Yeah, so if-
This is just in case money, in case the state.
I'm gonna I have to start doing something now because we have to treat it like a death penalty case the second it starts that way.
Gotcha.
But the,
So if the
Capital
prosecutor's
Defense
office
Fund-
decides to go to the death penalty, they
Then
have
we've
to
already
be-
the
started.
Capital Defense Fund won't pay anything until we've spent $10,000, but I got confirmation that we can spend the $10,000 before they actually file it. The problem is, under our statute, the prosecutor's office doesn't have to make a determination until 60 days after the arraignment when they get to district court. We haven't even had a prelim yet, but I've got some of the things we have to do are have a mitigation specialist. I've retained one. I'd like to start her working. And then if it ends up not being a death penalty case, great. If it does, we're not behind the 8 ball.
Okay. Do we need a motion for that?
So what I'd say is I would, because you're gonna have to make up to move funds.
No,
Or is it
it's
just
sitting in district court.
Okay,
So what we'll do
yep,
is we'll
no,
just
you're
pay it
good.
out of that
Yep.
line item, which is labeled trial expenses.
Okay.
And the prosecutors have their own money in their
Yep.
budget, so.
Okay, so Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we authorize the expenditure of $10,000 for the cases as presented.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor for further discussion. Any motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks,
If you
sir.
see that $10,000, just holler at me,
Okay.
and then we'll figure it out.
Yeah,
And you
I'll
said-
send you a confirming email with the case number and everything so that you have it set
Thank you.
aside
See you this afternoon?
this afternoon.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
Thanks, Dave.
Take
Thank
care.
you, sir.
Thanks for making the trek.
Yeah. Get the snowshoes on, man.
Yeah. Tanner boots.
There you go.
There you go.
There you go. All right, Shanda.
Good morning, Commission. Shanda Crystal, Purchasing and Economic Analyst. I've got 4 items before the board this morning. I'd like to start with an enterprise lease. The decision was made a couple of weeks ago to terminate the lease on the Dodge Grand Caravan for the Corners, turn it back in. I got updated just before this meeting that has since sold. So I am pleased to report that it sold for $27,400, which is about $3,000 more than what we purchased it for, which is fantastic.
And they don't know that it's got a poltergeist in it.
We did not mention
Now they do.
that. But because of the other equity we had in the van, we would expect to see just over $11,800 to come into the county.
Cool.
So I met with Christy a couple weeks ago and talked about, again, Enterprise has 3 different ways that we can receive those funds. One is a check, which we would not recommend. The second is prepaying monthly invoices, and then the credit sits on the invoice and we chew through that. We would also not recommend that option. We would like the third option. The Enterprise calls it a roll gain, and what that does is that $11,000 rolls over to pay more equity into the truck. So for easy numbers, right, we'll say we bought the truck for $30,000, right? If we put $10,000 towards it, right, we now owe $20,000 on that truck, and it adjusts our monthly payments on that. So that does a couple different things. It benefits the coroner in the fact that the lease payment is lowered.
Yep.
So his monthly lease payment is lower. And then it benefits the county also as when we go to return that truck, we're also going to have more equity when we go to turn back in that truck, and hence the term, roll it over, and you get a
Sure.
better gain at the end. So that is what we would like to recommend to the board as far as how those funds are utilized.
You recommend, Christie, nod head, yes, good?
Yeah.
That meets all the requirements? Okay. All right, I'm good with that.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we authorize termination of the lease on the Dodge Caravan and accept option number 3, which is rolling over the funds to the truck lease.
Truck, the coroner's truck.
All right, there's a motion on the floor. Is there further discussion? Any other motions? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Wonderful. Item number 2 is signing on titles for the vehicles that were previously declared as surplus. The one I just met with you on Tuesday goes to ISU, the ambulance goes, and the other 2 are going to be auctioned off this Saturday.
Okay, this is seller's representative, Block A, correct? In Block 4A is where my sign and signature is, correct? Because last time they told me the wrong one. All right.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we authorize your signature on the vehicle titles and declare them as surplus.
There's a motion on the floor. Is there any of the motion? Further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Aye. There we go. I'll leave it for you to fill in whatever, my printed name or whatever else, date sold, all that other stuff.
No problem.
That's there.
No problem. The
Okay.
third item I have before the board today is I would like to propose a weekly procurement update with the board. I am passing around an updated version of what was included in your packet, as this is a living, breathing document, and I've made adjustments to it. I would like to propose that this becomes a weekly thing that I touch base with the board, and so you are, I like it to call it a dashboard, right? I've got the boxes across the top that at a quick glance you'll be able to see how many bids we are currently working on. And that number 4, right, goes with the left-hand column at the bottom, all of those ones that are listed in progress. Any of the active bids, the 2 that we have, both say yes in that column, and any bids that are closed. I do want to clarify, closed does not mean awarded. The original one that we ran, the first one we ran this year for the environmental attributes, when nobody submitted bids by the deadline, right, we simply had to close that. We didn't award it, but we are seeking alternative proposals, and that project is moving forward, but as far as the bid goes, it's just closed and done. So then, we would like to also track the project as it goes. Past projects have at some point, right, just not become as important as other projects, so then they're put on hold or things like that. And so we want to keep track of what is in progress. That is going to be denoted, I didn't want to get this too full, right?
Yeah.
I wanted to give you a lot of information but not clutter it up, so hopefully that is what the 2 asterisks on the active column means. So you'll notice, right, that the admin flooring replacement says it is no, not active, meaning the bid is closed, but it has 2 asterisks on it, meaning that the project is in process. We awarded that project, Levi got right on it, we've started it. That one's even anticipated to be completed by the end of January, and so that one is moving right along.
One thing that I would say after we met the other day, I actually went back and I found one of my Skittle sheets, my progress sheets like this from military side.
Okay.
And pretty much everything there is the same, except there was one thing that I noticed that I think would be really good, is we have a completion date column. And we set a formula into it that you would enter your completion date. So like the flooring, you'd put a completion date, say,
January 31st or something.
yeah, January 28th.
Okay.
And it would also, what it would do is it would give you the date, but then it would count the days. So you have
If
days
you're beyond
2, and then once you go over, it starts counting negative days, and it flags it red. And then it starts popping up of why is this red? Because this is a Skittle sheet, red blocks are bad because red blocks draw attention. And so if you set that, then what happens is it helps us understand too, we have a date that we've aimed for this date. Is there other follow-on activities that are requiring of this facility? You know, because we got inmates that need to be there or whatever.
Right.
That was the only one, and that was actually one of my bosses that required that to be in there, because that was then, as the leadership role, when you started popping into those dates and that block has went red, that's when it's really, do we need to get involved? Do we need to have more what's going on here? Is there a contract that's been expired? Is there, because some of these
Major change
projects,
orders, something.
you might actually have a project, so like in the jail, if we ever went through with the jail thing, one of the things that we looked at putting in was penalty for non-compliance of contract terms, such as completion dates. And so we need to understand that.
Where we are.
And so that's just one of those in a quick column, it doesn't need to be big, but just
Right.
the completion date, and then right underneath it in that section is plus 90, minus, you know, you're minus 90, you have 90 days to get it done. Well, you hit 92, so now it's plus 2 and it's red. And so
think
that
that-
just, yeah.
Also describe, like, on a flooring project, right, it may take 30, 45 days, something like that to complete, right? But as we go to do other bathroom remodels, right, that's gonna be, right, 365, 400 days to
And that's
complete,
fine,
right? So
yeah.
you understand more so what the project entails. So
Yeah,
I
and
think
it-
that'll be a descriptive
I like
addition to
that
it.
suggestion.
Yeah,
And as I look at this, and again, I appreciate the discussions we've had, sitting here though, I don't know if I need that information requested column. I understand why you want it on there, and I would say for what you put on the website for the public to see,
okay.
probably just put that out there on
That one?
the other side, which would give you room to do the end date
Yeah.
that Terrell's
Gotcha.
talking about. And then my question is, if the sheriff's flooring replacement is no longer an active bid, why do we not put it down in the in progress section?
So in progress is the ones that we're building.
They're building requirements for,
So they start in progress, right? And that could be like the wash bay, right, that we talked about with Road and Bridge a little bit ago.
Okay,
As we
gotcha.
start and build that up, it could terminate before it ever actually gets published, or it could get published and then close,
Okay.
not move forward. But that's what this in progress
Okay.
means.
Great.
So the bid's in progress, but the project's not
Project is
necessarily.
not.
the
Correct.
idea has been
Yes.
greenlit,
Yeah.
but not
Yeah.
the,
So the
Yeah.
only other thing that I would ask is that we sort it, so your yeses are together and your nos are together.
Ah.
That's just a little,
Little OCD.
Yeah.
just a little.
no, and it's,
Exactly.
well,
I'm bouncing back and forth.
for like your information requested, I would say like this report, if you're giving it to us for a report, I'd say information requested would be what you would consider key critical items. So information requested from us, that's coming here for us of why we're looking at this is because information looking as, well, these guys have asked for information, who's doing what. There's certain things that we may or may not.
Well, the intent of
yeah.
that column is so she could let everybody know who's actually interested in this project.
Yes, and we don't need to necessarily know that. And actually, I'd prefer probably not to know that of who is wanting to bid on it, because then it just helps insulate us from having to have, well, you saw that this plumbing company was on this and you gave them, no, I don't necessarily want to know who's there, but what I want to know is like information requests or stuff like that, key information for us is I would look at, we've had a problem with this building and we're asking for more information dealing with the design spec and that,
Gotcha.
because that could incur additional cost or alteration of the bid. Does that make sense?
Right.
For me, that's how I look at that
Maybe
information.
instead of information requested, we title it project changes.
Yeah, project change, or just that column, I just look at that's stuff that you want us to know. Where like, I don't really want to know who's bidding on it, because that just creates,
Conflict of interest.
and we're in such a small community, let's face this, I go to Home Depot and I know half these guys. And I run into them and it's like, I don't want to,
No yet.
I really don't want to know who's bidding on that. I mean, if it comes up in a meeting, it comes up, but if I don't have to, have that there, but that column, yeah, just that, whatever the key information you want us to know, that's the so what behind it.
I love the dashboard though.
Yes,
All right.
Yep, I love
Okay.
it.
yeah.
So I did want to point out one other item that we had added in the budget approved, and that is that a single asterisk not approved in the fiscal year's budget process.
Okay.
So, right, anything that doesn't have those mean that it went through the entire budget process, right? It was reviewed and discussed and a dollar amount was assigned, and that's what was in the budget. But you'll notice those last two architecture requests that I had a couple weeks ago. Those ones were not in the original budget as we built it, but I have since come to the board and talked and got approval to move forward with those
Well,
projects.
and so that's going to be the other thing that we need to talk about into the budgetary process when we do that, is the project for the roof should include the architect. That is part of project.
Right?
And so that's going to be something that we're going to need to to break out,
Well,
Christie,
I
or
just
is,
slow it because it gives us something to
Yeah.
track. So at the end of the year, we can go back and see,
Yeah.
okay, we didn't do this correctly.
Right, and do it better next year.
but so that's for like in your budgets, like when we do the jail roof, the architectural for the detention, that's actually part of the project. So when somebody asks to have a roof put on, you're gonna have to have design spec, professional services by a design professional. That's just, any of these projects that we do, I can almost guarantee every single one of these is gonna have, except like the floor, the water line, admin water line, might actually have to have a engineering spec on it from a mechanical.
So.
Depending upon what they're doing, if it's a replacement, alteration, but that's one of those things, but we should just anticipate that, and if we don't do it, then that's fine if it's not needed, but when we start talking about that,
Something to
the design part is part of the project.
So essentially, those bottom two are included in the budget.
We just didn't, the problem is we didn't
It's-
anticipate the cost in.
Right, but it's gonna be the total cost, but we may have under budgeted the roof anyway
Yes.
for the jail.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So I don't know that you necessarily wanna, this is gonna be a public document. I don't know that we wanna really say this isn't a part of the budget, because it's
Well-
gonna be a part of the budget, because we didn't know at the time what the scope was gonna
yeah.
be.
So I think that's part of the discussion. I think what we need to do then is we need to probably have a discussion in a meeting and set that as a policy.
But, and
But any and all cost of that roof
Or in the
is
monies
a
that's
part of the
budgeted.
budget. So I
Yeah.
think essentially it is a part of the budget.
Well, again, just using simple numbers, if we set a budget for the roof at 100,000, we just thought that was materials and labor.
Did we?
I don't know, that's just part of the discussion here.
Yeah.
So if we come back later and say, oh, we forgot to add this and this, wouldn't we want to denote that, yes, we had this project was in the budget.
But not fully
But
budgeted.
we didn't budget it correctly because we left out steps X and Y.
Maybe. But here's gonna be the rebuttal to that is, they threw a number in there not knowing what the full scope of it was gonna be. So like when Jeff did the roof, he didn't know if he was gonna have to take off all
Full
layers.
deck or not, yeah.
Or if it was just gonna be an overlay. So we just budgeted what we thought we would need. And if it comes in lower, then essentially you could say is we over budgeted for it, so would you wanna note that?
Right.
I'm just thinking as a word of
Well,
caution,
eh,
we might just want to say, any and all costs associated with that project, we did anticipate as part of the cost of the project.
well, and I think that's part of that policy, is that's just what we need to clarify. Because that's where this was murky when we were doing this, is we didn't really put it that way. And I think that's a policy discussion that then these two items will clean themselves up, because no, they are going to be included in, that is included in. And for future projects, if they want to build a wash bay, engineering, design, professional services.
Will be included.
That is, you can't build the project without it.
Right.
That's required. And so that's why I say is, in the future, we just never had that that understanding.
And maybe some of that will be cleaned up with the centralized purchasing, where we try to refine all these processes for that we'll have that checklist of.
Right.
See, and that's the whole point too, is like the roof, you can't go to RFP and request a project like this without your design specs. And so you have to have the architectural points to do that. And that's what I'm saying, is I think that this will be a moot point, because this is a policy cleanup. This is a how do we look at the project? Are we looking at the project just for labor costs? And like you said, we left out X and Y. Well, on these projects, we didn't anticipate, we didn't look at that. And so for these one or two, yeah, we made a policy change to look at this, that from now on, we need to budget for all work associated with the project, like you said.
Here's the other problem you're gonna have. So you get into the bathrooms over at probation. You don't know the floor's rotted.
Yep.
So then the scope of the job becomes more than you anticipated.
Yep.
So do you want to denote that that's not budgeted for? Or do you just want to say, if we're going to do this project, it's going to include any and all costs associated with that project?
I think you would show a project, associated with it, but I think you would want to show costs that overrun, either over or under.
Which we
Well,
would do in
that
a
would be-
public hearing because, or a public meeting, because you'd need more money and
That
all
part
that
would come out in the
stuff.
financial review section at the end, if I understand our discussion correctly, Shanda, that, we have our original bid at, again, just using the sheriff's thing at face value of 75,000, and we end up at 100, then at the end we come back and say, why were we at 100? Well, because we didn't include the architectural review, or we ran into some flooring that we weren't anticipating.
We had to replace the decking, or,
Yeah.
On the architect stuff, Aren't we paying that 75 out of the 750?
Yes, it should be, is
Yes,
where,
that
that's
one.
where we approved it to go out
It's the
of.
museum one that I'm more concerned that we're not gonna have the funds within the 130.
Unless we carry it over
And split it over a year.
Oh,
and split it.
Gotcha, right?
So,
Right.
because right now it looks like we're gonna spend, which, I don't know, maybe that roof won't come in at 750,000.
It might not.
It might come in at a million.
Well,
But it might come in at 500, and then this looks like we've budgeted 825,000 when we haven't.
yeah.
So I think you might want to be careful, because this says budget approved. You've budgeted, you show 750 for the roof and 75 for the architecture.
Well-
So I think we might want to somehow try to just include that,
Or maybe the budget,
but denote definitely that of the 750,
Right.
75
this
is
has
going to
been-
be dedicated for architecture. I don't
We
know
could
that
do
you
that.
can
or
put it on
the,
here.
or the
In
budget,
the status, right, we could add that detail in there as
Yeah.
something that I want the board to know.
Or better yet,
This has been that piece of the puzzle.
budget approval column. You have cost, budget approval. And so, again, how we look at it, let's look at it in the lenses of those titles. No, and it gets big, and Skittle sheets get big, and that's why we want to avoid it. But the name of, is it budget approved? For me, when I say budget approved, I'm not looking at the cost amounts, I'm looking at, was it approved in the section? Does that make sense? Was it approved? You know, we're looking at doing just the initial work, and we need to put it in the budget next year. Is it budget approved? Yes or no? I'd look at that as like a yes/no question of like, the sheriff's office, the medical bay renovation, was that approved in the budget?
Yes, in the fiscal year budget.
We put it in the
process.
fiscal year budget, so yes, that's an approval.
Okay.
And so maybe we change the name instead of budget approved to cost.
So I do want to separate those two, though. I do want
Because you
to
want
show, yeah, I want to show the commission that we either came in under budget, we were on budget, and that's what the financial review.
Okay.
Right, once that project is complete, then we'll say, great, we were on time, we were on budget, we had a major change order, right? We found a rotting floor, you know, so we had to adjust and change, and when we're over budget by the cost of that floor.
So can you show in those, and instead of budget approved, cost overrun, cost underrun? I mean, because
In the
again,
financial review, yes.
But, yeah, that would be in that financial review section.
so that's what I'm saying, is when people see budget approved, are we approved in the fiscal budget, or is it something that's going to need to be approved in the fiscal budget?
You know what? What are you going to do when this runs over 2 years?
Well, and that's the whole thing.
I thought about the
So-
bathrooms on that one, and how that would work.
Does that make
And I
sense?
think you still want to have, I'm with Shanda, you want to have budget approved, because that shows how much you have allocated for that project.
Okay.
And then over here, you could say anticipated costs are going to be, or once you get a contract or a bid, you could say 500,000, architect 75,000, so on and so forth. You could try and do that somehow, maybe somewhere else, but I think because we are government, you definitely want that budget
Budget
approved.
approved, okay.
Well, that brings up a good question. So if,
Budget allocation.
yeah, if we had allocated, again, for the roof, $100,000, we don't want on this sheet to show, okay, we went out to bid for the architect, because that was already in that 100,000, or we do want to show in this. Do you want to show each of the pieces of the bid for that project? Well, I guess the bathrooms would be a better one.
It depends on what kind of project it is, because if you're doing a design build versus, so if you have a project where you're actually asking for a construction company or our architect's group to actually run the project, like with the jail, we ask for a request for qualification for that construction company to actually, because those fees would be broken out internal to the project cost,
It would
but they
just
wouldn't be
be,
broken
here's the
out.
project.
They would just be the project costs. But if we're taking a project for like this, you're going to have a design professional that's going to do the base architecture, the base engineering and architecture, and say this is here, but then they're not going to be involved with the construction aspect of it at all.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
I
But
think I
you might
want to
have-
show the bid, but I do want to adjust how we do that allocation though.
Well-
Because, right, we don't want to, if there's multiple 3 or 4 bids in one, right? I don't want to compound and add and add and add.
Right.
So I think there is some adjustment in how to show it, but maybe included.
Well, and I think the only time you'd break it down like that is if you had a phased bid. Now, that's pretty common in a lot of areas. We don't
RV park.
do those, but a phased bid or a phased project
Well,
would be
The landfill.
Well, that could be one, but what I mean by a phase bid, and this is getting to be pretty popular, is we'll go out to bid for the roof, and you'll say architects for this, and may lead to the bid process for project, or for the actual installation. You may add those phases, because then what's happening is you may have a company that bids for it, and you liked what they did in the architectural stuff, but there was an issue with whatever their costs, so you can actually award. But the only time I think you would delineate the breakdown of the bids is if you're breaking the project in your RFP or RFQ, and you're saying, we want you to bid specifically on the architecture portion or this. If it's a broken bid, that's when you'd split it apart. If it's just a project and it's been RFP'd as one solid one, you would only show the one solid project.
Yes, right? So this is definitely a living document.
No, it is.
I will make some adjustments, right? Bring it to you next week. We'll do the same thing, hopefully much shorter. I did want to point out two things in regards to this. One is that medical bay that's currently in process. It is under review by the Sheriff's Office, and I have really liked getting cross-sections of people from different places with eyes on things. That is working out fantastic. The county has some wonderful individuals that we have been able to pull from their experiences in their county life or their past lives, right, that are willing to help out a project. And, right, Levi Waldron had 95% of this scope of work done, which was extensive. It was a lot of work for him to put together. I had Jeff Underwood and Daniel Kendall, right, come and just talk things through, kind of like what we're doing here, right? And they brought out some different aspects of things that, oh yeah, I didn't consider from that angle or something like that, right? Just different worlds, different backgrounds that they've had. So it was very interesting, and I think, right, at the end of the day, we're going to have an even better product as we get those different cross-sections of employees on board. So,
well, and the other thing too is in this is we need to look at the cost of projects of either, and when we go out to bid and we do stuff like this, we need to look at doing it whether it's general contracted by somebody else or kept in-house or however, and we need to not make those assumptions that it's automatically cheaper or better or faster. Because what happens a lot of times, especially in the construction trades, the more complex things, and we see this a lot with the electricians and the plumbers that were here, they work for specific general contractors, and they will get, they work for them at a different price, and they work for them at a different schedule. And a lot of times when we do stuff on our own, just because we think it's cheaper because we don't have a general contractor involved and it saves us 10% off the project, a lot of times in the grand scheme of things with your subcontractors, if they're not available, we're going to pay a premium for those guys. Well, that's why I say I really like the aspect when we have a discussion about we want to look at this when we go to RFP as for a lot of these projects, doing it in-house, doing it out-of-house, because it helps us measure what the overall cost and burden of some of these things are.
Priorities, time frame.
Oh, it does, because sometimes money is the measurable, the easy measurable, but sometimes it's the tangible, it's the time, it's the availability, it's the opportunity loss of not having a facility done, or those things that we need to look at as well, and that's one of the things we need to consider.
For sure.
So,
but this will be, right, every time, if you have questions, concerns, comments, right, that will be the time that we can talk about and review anything. In that arena, that brings me to number 4. We do have a recommendation to bring before the board for the administrative water line bid. We did go out for informal bid on this one. We did invite 5 companies to bid, as well as post it on our website, so anybody that was looking, right, could find it. We from the 5 invitation companies that we invited, 3 of them did not communicate back. One of them declined to bid due to workload issues that they had, and one submitted a bid by the deadline. The Sheriff's Office has reviewed that bid and feels like that bid is responsive and compliant with the request that we made, and we would like to recommend awarding the administrative water line project to Streamline Plumbing for $65,000.
okay. All right.
Okay. Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we accept the bid from Streamline Plumbing for $65,000 for the admin water line as presented.
There's a motion on the floor. Is there further discussion or any other motions? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
I don't know if there's anything we need to sign on that. I didn't see anything in the packet.
There's not on that
Okay.
one.
There'll be a contract that'll work up with them, and then we should be signing a contract.
So on these ones, unless we want to do it different, they hadn't done.
There's no acceptance. I think what would be best is we do need to figure out some kind of, we've authorized the project, have a I think it would be best to have a memo and just come back for accounting purposes and for authority purposes. We've done it, let's prep the memo
For
then,
signature on
and then
Tuesday.
Tuesday, it's just a signature of, hey, you guys have approved this, let's sign it and say, yep, we did this at this time and this time. I don't know if they need to sign it, but what it does is at least shows on our end that the board did approve this and we said to do that.
Fantastic.
I would agree with that.
Okay.
I'll touch base with legal.
Want us to help track costs, then we need something that tells us that.
Yeah, and that's why I was thinking of having that memo with the cost in it, and it goes in, and it can go into your records, and they're at the same time. Cool? All right, with that being said,
Thank you.
Mr. Davenport.
all right.
Christy Davenport, Management Assistant. I just am presenting to you, on our new website, we have a button for hardship applications. And I have typed up a how to apply for hardship, which includes a reference to the statutes that a person can go to see whether they qualify or not, where they can find an application, how to submit it, what to do if the commissioners disagree, and that they can appeal that. I have passed this through legal, and I just wanted your permission to go ahead and post it to the website along with the application.
And will all of this be fillable online?
I will make sure that happens, yes.
Okay.
The only thing is people do have to bring it in to sign before a notary.
Oh.
A notary does need to see their signature.
Or they have to do it in front of another notary.
Right, exactly.
So, yeah. You got anything on it? You're good with it?
Yeah, legal, you guys will look at it, we're happy with things?
Yeah, just have a spot where they can attach other financial information, because that's required, but.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, I'm good with that.
Then, Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we accept that and authorize posting on the website.
All right, there's a motion on the floor. Further discussion? Any other motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, that looks like we are concluded, and we will stand at recess until 1:30 unless anybody else has objections.
Was there some alcohol licenses?
I believe we signed them all at the same time
Okay, I just wanted to
and
make sure.
approved them.
Yeah, there were two.
Yeah, but they were approved and done. Do you want a separate motion right now to
That would probably be just so it's separate, but.
Okay.
but it's one of these-
just, yeah,
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we approve the alcohol licenses as presented.
there's a motion on the floor. Further discussion or any other motion? All in favor?
Aye.